Imagine spending 3 hours wrestling with an Allen key, a set of instructions written in Swedish, and the growing suspicion that you are missing at least one crucial screw. Your fingers hurt. Your back aches from leaning over the floor. You have seriously considered throwing the whole thing out the window at least 4 times. But then you step back and look at what you have built. It is wobbly. It is slightly crooked. The shelf is not quite level, and the door does not close all the way. And yet you love it. You would defend it with your life. You would never trade it for the same model, already assembled, straight out of a box. That is not rational. That is not logical. But it is deeply, profoundly human. This is called the IKEA effect, and it is one of the most powerful forces shaping your decisions, your relationships, and your career, without you even realizing it. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever kept a project going long after you knew it was failing? Ever defended an idea that clearly had flaws just because you came up with it? Ever stayed in a relationship or a job longer than you should have, simply because you had already invested so much time? If you answered yes to any of those, you have already felt the IKEA effect at work. And chances are, you had no idea it was happening. The IKEA effect was first named and studied by a team of researchers including Michael Norton, Mochon, and Dan Ariely. They wanted to understand why we become so attached to things we have had a hand in creating. So they designed a simple but brilliant experiment. They gave participants a set of pieces and asked them to build something simple, like a storage box or a piece of furniture. Then they asked them to bid on their own creation, offering money to buy it from the experimenters. The results were striking. People consistently valued their own creations far more than identical items built by someone else. They were willing to pay almost double for something they had assembled themselves, even though the end product was objectively identical. The effort mattered more than the outcome. The process changed how they saw the object entirely. Now, you might think this is just about being proud of your handiwork. And in some ways it is. But the IKEA effect runs much deeper than simple pride. It taps into a fundamental psychological need for competence and control. When you build something, you are proving to yourself that you are capable. You are exercising agency over your environment. That feeling is deeply satisfying on a primal level. And because you have invested your time, your energy, and your sweat into the thing, it becomes an extension of your identity. It is no longer just a piece of furniture. It is your piece of furniture. It carries a part of you in it. And you cannot easily separate your sense of self from the thing you have created. Think about the implications of this. It is not just about flat-pack bookshelves and Billy bookcases. The IKEA effect applies to anything you put effort into. Your child brings home a drawing from school. It is messy. The colors are outside the lines. The figure they drew looks more like a potato than a person. But you put it on the fridge anyway because they made it. It is precious because they invested their time and their creativity into it. The same thing happens with your own work. You spend weeks or months developing an idea at your job. You write the proposal. You build the presentation. You fight for it in meetings. Even if someone else points out a flaw that would save the project, you resist. You defend your idea as if it were your own child. And in a way, it is. You gave birth to it through effort, and that effort has bonded you to it in ways that reason alone cannot break. This becomes a problem when you overvalue your own creations and refuse to see their limitations. You fall in love with your first draft and stop revising. You cling to an old strategy because you were the one who proposed it. You stay in a relationship that has run its course because you have invested so much time and energy into it. That last one is so common it has its own name. It is called the sunk cost fallacy. But it works hand in hand with the IKEA effect. You invested effort, so you value the outcome more highly than it deserves. The effort traps you. The more you put in, the harder it is to walk away, even when walking away is the smartest thing you could do. You are not evaluating the thing on its own merit anymore. You are evaluating it based on the effort you have already poured into it. And here is where it gets really interesting. The IKEA effect does not just make you love your own creations. It makes you blind to better alternatives. In the original experiments, participants were shown two identical objects. One they built themselves. One was built by someone else. They consistently preferred their own, even when the other was objectively better built. The quality did not matter as much as the origin. The creator mattered more than the creation. This is why some companies have started using what they call the build-your-own strategy. They let customers customize products, choose colors, add features, make small decisions. And suddenly, the customer loves the product more. They feel connected to it. They are less likely to return it. They are more likely to recommend it. Not because the product changed, because the customer invested effort. And effort creates attachment. But here is the uncomfortable part. The same mechanism that makes you love your handmade shelf also makes you love your bad ideas, your bad habits, your bad relationships. You invested time, so you assume they must be valuable. But that is not logic. That is psychology. And psychology does not care about what is true. It cares about what feels true. Now imagine you are a manager. You have two employees. One has just joined the company. The other has been there for 10 years. Both propose similar ideas. Whose idea are you more likely to favor? If you are like most people, you will lean toward the veteran. Not because their idea is better. Because they have invested time. They have earned the right. Their effort makes their idea feel more valuable. But that is exactly the bias that kills innovation. Companies cling to old strategies because people are attached to them. Teams resist change because they built the current system. Leaders double down on failing projects because they cannot admit the effort was wasted. The IKEA effect is everywhere, invisible and incredibly expensive. And it does not stop there. Let us talk about identity. When you build something, it becomes part of who you are. You are not just someone who made a shelf. You are a person who makes things. You are not just someone who wrote a book. You are an author. You are not just someone who started a business. You are an entrepreneur. And once something becomes part of your identity, you will defend it fiercely. Even when defending it hurts you. This is why people stay in careers they hate. They spent years building that career. Leaving would mean admitting those years were a waste. It would mean rethinking who they are. And that is terrifying. So they stay. They invest more. They build more. They entrench themselves deeper. And the IKEA effect keeps tightening its grip. But here is the thing. The IKEA effect is not entirely bad. It is not a flaw in your brain. It is a feature. It helps you commit. It helps you persevere. It helps you value what you create. Without it, you would abandon projects at the first sign of difficulty. You would never finish anything. You would never build anything lasting. The IKEA effect is what makes you proud of your work. It is what gives you a sense of ownership. It is what makes you care. The problem is not the effect itself. The problem is when you let it run unchecked. When you cannot tell the difference between something genuinely valuable and something you just spent a lot of time on. When you defend a bad idea because it is yours. When you stay in a bad situation because leaving would feel like failure. That is when the IKEA effect becomes dangerous. So what do you do about it? How do you keep loving what you build without being trapped by it? The first step is awareness. Simply knowing about the IKEA effect weakens its hold on you. Once you recognize the bias, you can start to question it. You can ask yourself a simple question. Would I love this if someone else had built it? Would I defend this idea if it came from a stranger? Would I stay in this situation if I had only invested a week instead of a decade? That question cuts through the illusion. It separates the effort from the outcome. It lets you see clearly. Because effort is not the same as value, and time is not the same as truth. The second step is to build the habit of killing your darlings. This phrase comes from writing, but it applies to everything. When you create something, you fall in love with it. You become blind to its flaws. You resist cutting parts that are not working. But the best creators learn to kill their darlings. They delete beautiful sentences that do not serve the story. They scrap features that do not serve the user. They abandon strategies that do not serve the goal. Not because they hate their work, because they love the outcome more than they love their own effort. They are willing to let go of what they built in order to build something better. And that takes courage, because letting go feels like loss. But it is not loss. It is growth. The third step is to seek outside perspectives. Your own mind is biased. You cannot trust it to evaluate your own creations. You need other people. People who did not invest the time. People who do not share your attachment. People who can see what you cannot. This is why great writers have editors. Great directors have critics. Great leaders have advisors. They know their own judgment is compromised. So they invite others to speak honestly. And they listen. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because the truth you do not want to hear is often the truth you need most. The fourth step is to separate your identity from your creations. You are not your shelf. You are not your project. You are not your business. You are not your relationship. You are a person who has built things. But those things are not you. They are things you made. And things can be changed. Things can be improved. Things can be abandoned. Without you losing yourself. This is hard. Because when you have invested years into something, it feels like part of you. And in some ways it is. But it is not all of you. You are bigger than any single creation. And the sooner you realize that, the easier it becomes to let go. Let us bring this back to where we started. That wobbly shelf you built. You love it. And that is fine. You should love it. You worked hard. You earned the pride. But if someone showed you a better shelf tomorrow, would you refuse to even look at it? Would you defend your crooked one until the end? Or would you admit that maybe, just maybe, your effort has made you blind? The IKEA effect is real. It is powerful. And it will shape your life, whether you notice it or not. But once you see it, you can work with it instead of against it. You can still build things. You can still love them. You can still take pride in your work. You just cannot let that pride trick you into staying stuck. Because the goal is not to stop loving what you build. The goal is to love it enough to let it go when it is time. The goal is to build something better next time. And the time after that. And the time after that. Because you are not your shelf. You are not your idea. You are not your past. You are the person who keeps building. And that person is not finished yet.